I just had.
Really bright.
I just couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
I just read there.
So.
Karen is not Karen. I feel. I read the letter. Yeah.
How have you been?
Good.
I'm gonna.
It's you. Excited to have this project going. Oh, that's where I'm going.
Carol's here too. Yeah. Carol's here?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's
Should
another
I still
part
be
of
into
the-
the
No, I'm just telling you.
Are real.
That's good, I like that, it took a lot. What we'll try to do is we'll try to fill the table up front and work our way. Yeah.
You know, I was doing, I want to solve everybody.
Good.
The room.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but.
It was amazing.
Well, that's, I mean, that's just a good setup of the room.
Yeah.
I was talking about it this hour. Yeah, yeah.
I know it is.
She had nasty. Gas talking, fire.
till 8:30, so if you have any, you can leave things here if you need to, or if you have to come in and go out for a minute. If folks want to make a comment, just to let you know that we have a big space up in front. We also have microphones up front that pick up sound real well up here. I can't guarantee they will pick voices up in the back. So we do ask at the conclusion of our activity that you choose someone from where you're sitting to come and share where we can all record it on the video with the group. So with that, again, I'm Tom Purcell, Senior Planner with our Long Range Planning Unit. With me on the county side is Karen Gardner, our Planning and Building Department Director. We're very happy to have her here tonight. Also on the county side, we have my colleague Dana Watkins, who will be moderating the Zoom and other pieces. Then on the consultant side, sitting up front, we have a couple of folks from Mid-Tier Harnish who have been working with the county to help us put together these community-based design standards. We have Brent Gibbons, the project manager. From Mid-Tier Harnish, we also have Nikki Zanchetta, the assistant project manager. And on the your far right, we have Will Salza, who is also a planner of Mid-Tier Harnish here to help listen and take notes tonight. So with that, do we have the screen live? Go ahead and start the slideshow. So tonight's workshop is more for listening, but I will start with a little bit of background for the new folks that share what we're doing, what this project is about, some of the longer history that's been involved in the Community Design Standards project, and most importantly, how all of you in Shingle Springs can stay involved with the development of your community design standards throughout the project. So we'll start with just an overview of the project purpose and the background, why we're here. We will be especially looking for additional feedback on the original draft of the community design standards. And if you didn't pick up a copy, I think we have a few copies floating around and we can bring more to your tables as well. We did hear quite a bit of your feedback last meeting. We want to make sure that as staff and consultants that we accurately captured your comments. We want to make sure we didn't miss anything. If you have new comments to share, we definitely want to include those and not miss those. Next slide. So just in brief, this slide has far more information than that can be talked about in less than 5 minutes. But suffice it to say that this project has been ongoing in the Shingle Springs community anyway since at least 2012. So I do want to extend a big thanks to community members who helped spearhead this project and have helped be the reason for why we're here today. So beginning in 2012, we did have a lot of community-based activities going on. And then recently, as many of you are following, our Board of Supervisors did approve a contract for Mid-Tier Harnish to assist in development of permanent design standards, including Shingle Springs as the first to start. And those were to be based on the interim community design standards that the board last adopted late last year. So that brings us to where we are here today. So last month and this month, we're holding the first of many community workshops here in Shingle Springs to get input on an initial draft of the community design standards. And then tonight's workshop, which is to get additional input on the draft standards, but also we'll be having a group discussion to make sure that we accurately capture input. And in a few minutes, we'll be assigning different topics that were of interest to the community. Based on the last workshop, we received 4 key areas of discussion that the community wanted some more information about. And we'll be asking for your feedback on those 4 other pieces of information to make sure we capture your comments for the standards. Next slide. So this Shingle Springs piece of the project is just one piece of many steps. So again, after Shingle Springs develops its permanent design standards and guidelines, the remaining community regions on the screen would have theirs. And then we would be finishing the project with community design standards and guidelines for the remaining rural regions. Those are those areas scattered throughout the county with clusters of commercial and multifamily development in the hinterlands, for lack of a better word. Next slide. Based on the first workshop, we did receive some strong areas of community feedback that we wanted to dial into for sure. A couple of items as the community really wanted this document to represent Shingle Springs. We wanted the document to reflect the identity of who you are as a community, who we are who live and work here. And with that, we heard loud and clear from the community that the community wanted designs that are compatible with this unique community. That is the unique gold rush and ranching history, and pioneer history and even rail history, and also high quality architecture. So the feedback that we got from the last round was that the community wanted the purpose of the document to emphasize high quality architecture, high quality design, regardless of where it goes in the community. We also got more feedback that the community would like additional local images and graphics. So that will be one of our discussion topics, how to help bolster the local images and graphics that would best represent Shingle Springs to the community. For example, there were photographs of a different community down the hill. And we heard loud and clear that the community would like foothill style local based photographs. So we'll be putting out a call for photographs as well. But we'll have that as one of our discussion items. We also received feedback on the document format and organization itself. So staff and the consultant team want to tease out a little bit more about your feedback on how the document is organized. If you think anything should be formatted differently, more or less the general layout. Next slide. So there, as I said earlier, there are many ways for the community to get involved in this project. This slide shows the key process steps and then opportunities, not just today, for additional public input. So we're here on the July 28th second community workshop. So again, thank you all for taking the time to do this out here. After we receive input from this workshop, the consultant staff will be compiling that input and adding those comments to the ones we received. Then we will have an additional 30-day public review period as well. So once a draft is developed that captures the feedback from tonight, it will be released for 30 days again for additional input. Staff did receive the feedback that we needed more, the community wanted more time to review the document. So this should allow time for folks who might want to submit comments but haven't, or have questions about a certain piece of the document, or other comments to go ahead and submit those. So there will be a email announcement to this listserv, to the other, probably to Facebook, to the other posts as well. When that date comes out, we're anticipating late September, early October for that 30-day release. And then we also anticipate another opportunity for involvement will be the planning commission hearing. Right now, we're assuming a December date. And that's an additional opportunity for folks to come in and let the public and planning commission know their thoughts and feedback as well. And then we will have the board of supervisors hearing. We're thinking the end of January right now to keep it on track with the board's goals. And that's another opportunity again to give our board feedback and input for review and possible adoption in January of 2026. Next slide. So throughout the project, staff will continue to reach out to the community for input. So these are just some of the ways that the community members can participate. We do have a custom email address that some of you have already used. Shingle Springs Community Design Standards at edcgov.us. And anyway, that website is just for this community. You can also look for project updates, especially the upcoming planning commission and board hearing updates on the community design standards webpage. If you haven't seen that, that link is live there. It'll take you right to that. And then we'll also add more project updates as they happen. Social media channels, your email subscriber notice board, and other press releases as well. And I will send that information out to the local Shingle Springs list as well. So we'll make sure to keep you all updated. And then based on feedback, we're also asking community members to send high quality photos. We've received only one set of photos so far, but I did receive comments from many other folks that wanted to submit photos, so I have it on my calendar on Monday to go ahead and send a big email list, a big call for photos. Photos can all be submitted to that same project webpage. And if you have large files or multiple photos, multiple emails are fine, or if you know how to compress them already, that's fine. If you don't, we'll take multiple emails in there, that's fine as well. So that's another way you might get input. If you do submit photographs, just up front, we would like you to include your name just for photo credit. Or a name that you'd like associated with the photo. And if you could also write us a short phrase or description, like 4 or 5 words about the photo, for federal accessibility rules and web posting rules. Just a little summary of photo of Shingle Springs ice cream shop or whatever it is. If you could tell us captions that should be on the photos, they don't have to pop up live, but we need to have like a hidden caption for federal accessibility rules. So that helps folks with electronic readers, for example, to see or visualize what that photograph would show if they could see it. So I'll keep folks updated with that. So before I turn it over, I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions of the room or of Zoom on anything we said so far, and then I'll explain our discussion format next. Go ahead.
Where can we find that email address? It's in the packet?
It is on the first page of the slideshow. I will go ahead and have that posted on Monday to the web. But if there's anyone, let's see, do I have it? I guess if you want to, just the old school, I made it one big word to be easy to remember. Shingle Springs Community Design Standards, all one word, lowercase, at edcgov.us, the same as the other county email addresses, just one word. So is that Shingle Springs Community Design Standards? I can put it back up there if you like, at edcgov. Yes.
The last meeting I attended, it was another design thing here with a lot of pictures. But one of the things I requested is that the committee or consultants as you were, is to get feedback from the tribal government because they bought up large swaths of land in Shingle Springs as to their cooperation and design standards and include them. Invite them to one of these meetings.
Good feedback. So I will go ahead and we'll add that to the feedback as well, especially with this upcoming release, which is for that reason. To make sure that the document gets circulated to all the folks that are interested, for sure. Yes, go ahead.
Hasn't the invitation, the invitation, as far as I know, was put out to the entire community, so anybody that did want to come.
Correct, and to the extent that, I don't know if there are any current tribal representatives on that e-blast list, but we did send it community-wide to every email that the county staff and community members could think of. And so that will definitely, I can definitely make sure that the tribes are aware, like the Shingle Springs up here, for sure. So that they could have a chance to review the revised document, and we'll be releasing that again, so they'll have time to do that. Any other questions?
Joe,
Yeah.
comment, the planning commission meetings in December, I believe there's only one, it'll be the second week.
Yes.
The other one falls on.
That's the target. So,
Okay. So really,
any other questions on the presentation, what I've said so far? So with that, if we can put this last slide up for a moment. Do we have Zoom participants as well?
No, there is.
All right. Well, we'll check, but if there are no Zoom participants, we'll just go ahead and put the discussion slide up. So what we'll be doing in a couple of minutes, as we'll be passing out topic cards. We chose those 4 key topics based on feedback from our last workshop. So each table will have 2 separate topics of the 4 to give folks an option for discussion pieces. And then we also have a list of discussion questions that go with each topic just to help the thinking process, if you will, kind of focus on what feedback we're looking for. Each group will then have 10 minutes. And so if you have at least 3 to 4 to a group, that will be fine. At the end of 10 minutes, we'll let you know when the time is up, and if your group could select someone to take notes and share the group discussion for the benefit of all of us. We do have a place where folks who want to come up and report for their group can kind of share, and we can all have a discussion of your notes from each table group. That way we will all hear what we're all saying. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Brent with Nikki Arnish if he has any other comments before we start.
Sure. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking time to come out. I appreciate it. We're rounding out the this project, getting closer and closer to the public review draft and eventually the hearings. And this has been a long time coming. So that's why I think it's important tonight that through these breakout discussions that we kind of hone in on a few of these topics. And these topics, as county staff had touched on, are really ones that we've received based on public feedback so far. So we want to just hone in on those a bit further, make sure that we have the right direction. So when it goes out for the next round of review and goes before your decision makers, the commission, at the board, we're on the right path. What we don't want is to bring something forward that the community goes, oh wait, that's not what we were thinking when we get down to that portion. So what we're going to do shortly is we're going to hand out the topic areas. What I'm going to ask is this table here. Carol, raise your hand. There you go. This table here and then these two front ones, if we can consolidate to these three tables.
This gentleman come over here, and
Yes.
maybe these two gentlemen come over here.
And then
on the table.
we're gonna put out the topics at each of these tables.
Good job, good job.
What I would ask of everybody is based on those topics, there's a series of questions and there'll be a facilitator at each table. Work through those questions. The county has allotted between 10 and 15 minutes for the discussion. And then what I'm gonna ask is that one of you at each of these tables volunteers to report out what your table's consensus or thoughts are for the group. If you're not comfortable with that, we can definitely do it, but I think it's better to come from community members rather than ourselves as like part of the consultant or staff. And then we'll do a group reporting. All of the feedback that we get, we will catalog and then work with county staff to implement as part of the next draft of the plan. So we're gonna bring out these different table topics per table. We'll have a large board, there's Sharpies, we can write down all of the comments and suggestions by table. Then again, there'll be a staff member or a consultancy member at each of the tables, we have specific questions related to your topic. So if we can pull everybody forward, and we're gonna do 3 tables, so 1, 2, and 3, we're gonna consolidate.
You're next to
Come on, everybody. Yeah.
Friendly, right? I didn't attend the last one. Okay, that's good.
So this is what you did, this is what. All right. So we had topic number 2, which was parking garages, lots and on-site circulation. Question 1 was, should parking structures, garages be allowed in Shingle Springs? If so, when and to what extent? We said generally no. Maybe if you're doing an apartment project and you need an individual garage for each unit, that might be okay. But we don't want to see any of the multi-story parking garages like you would see in larger cities.
Is that possible here?
I
Do we need something like that?
don't think so, but I guess, well, and the other thing too is be said is if somebody really has a need for one, of course, there's always a discretionary process where they can have it
It's
for
in
them.
Shingle Springs
What?
over at the casino.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Property.
I know,
Yeah.
I mean, it is here.
It's hidden.
Parking garage.
Question 2 was some public comments expressed concern over requiring sidewalks with new developments since it reflected a suburban environment. Should frontage improvements like sidewalks be required or optional? We had a pretty good discussion on this one, but we settled on generally yes, again, just for commercial and multifamily development. Not talking about putting sidewalks on every street in Shingle Springs, but in our commercial areas, generally yes. But we would prefer either a natural path or stamped and colored concrete to better represent the aesthetic of Shingle Springs and not just plain concrete like you might see everywhere else. The next question was, one consideration from the public comments was to limit the placement of parking areas so they are not located on the street frontage, giving more prominence to the buildings on site. Do you feel this is necessary or appropriate? Should this requirement vary based on the development height? We generally thought it would be best to try to keep parking either in the back of the building or alongside the building. Again, if somebody has a case where they need parking in the front, then that's something that can be discussed as part of the planning process. It is a little bit complicated because unlike, Diamond Springs or Placerville, unfortunately, we have existing buildings that already have parking in the front. And so, that may make it more complicated, but generally we thought that the best look is generally to have parking either off to the side of the building or behind the building, directly in front of the building. So that was our first topic. Our second topic was format, organization, and photos. And after reviewing the draft Shingle Springs design standards and guidelines, do you have any suggestions on the legibility and readability of the document? I think the main Sue and Tim both have extensive written comments, so we're going to defer to those for a lot of this. But we did say as kind of an overall comment that we should try to change as many shoulds to shalls as we possibly can, so that way they're more enforceable and they're clearer for the folks that will be using them and consulting them. Obviously more enforceable for projects that have to that are ministerial. Which kind of leads into the next question, which is, should the draft design standards maintain the 2-part organizational structure, or should the chapters be consolidated into a single chapter that all projects have to adhere to? As Tom explained to us, this is really referring to, do we have a separate section for projects that are ministerial projects, which means they get to go forward as long as they meet all the requirements, or versus discretionary projects where the county can say no if it wants to. We think it should generally just be one set of requirements, and if somebody wants to be exempted from them, they obviously have the discretionary pathway that they can apply for. But we would like to see, again, as many of the shoulds change to shalls, and for it to apply to everybody. Not everybody who's proposing a multifamily or commercial project. And then community photo preferences. Gentleman, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but he showed us some photos and we put dots on them if we liked them, and red dots if we didn't. We also shared, Sue had a copy of the Shingle Springs Community Alliance survey. And so we said that we would recommend the county refer to those and kind of selecting photos, because that had a sample size of 126 people, I think, which is pretty good sample size. So yeah, that was our feedback. I feel like I should ask for questions, but I don't.
Yeah, and folks, after you submit comments, make sure that you leave your comments where we can pick them up and make sure that we collect them all. Don't leave any comments sitting there.
I should.
Perfect, yeah, once we get them.
So I come with a helper.
Oh, okay.
And I figured out, I was like, why do you have the blue one?
Oh,
They're-
yeah.
Those are name
Yeah.
tags. I thought maybe it's part of the game or something. No,
Should be the price
we didn't get the
tag.
memo.
Yeah.
It's Anna White. Hi, everyone, I'm Gina Posey, I'm representing our table in the back, and we were, for the most part, in consensus on everything. Our question was, during community workshop number 1, community members voiced concern that 3 were too many optional architectural styles, and that the list of styles could be narrowed down. One concept focused on removing the industrial farmhouse style, as it is not as applicable in the community as the remaining 2 architectural styles. Is this concern relevant and applicable? If so, should this style be removed as an option within the document? So the 3 architectural styles are Gold Rush, Railroad Craftsman, and Industrial Farmhouse. And in our group, we basically said, let's keep all 3 because each of them had a different purpose depending on whether you were multifamily or whether you were commercial. And we want to have as many options as makes sense, but not too many. So keeping all 3 makes sense to us. We really like the Gold Rush style, which is similar to what Placerville looks like. We can envision having small business, small business, small business. We could see that you have the overhang, so you have shade as you walk down the street. That was very community oriented, very friendly. So we really like that standard. And we felt that it was affordable as a design standard as well. We also like the look and feel of places like Napa and Danville as examples where there's just a feel when you're there of a community, of engagement and someplace unique. You've now got off the highway for a reason and we want to provide that, but we want to keep within what we're trying to do in Shingle Springs, keep us unique. And then finally, we talked about that this should apply to both the ministerial as well as the affordable housing, as well as all projects. There shouldn't be 2 different standards depending on whether you're doing multifamily or whether you're commercial. We should have one set of standards. So the next question was public comments focused on the desire to have 3 architectural styles apply uniformly in Shingle Springs, regardless of whether it was a streamlined project or not. Do you feel this shift is necessary? If so, why? Again, we felt that we should have one set of standards and it should apply. There should not be a loophole that says that if you're ministerial, you're going to be treated differently. We also recognize that the state is very heavy-handed here, trying to get things built. And so we got to be really cautious that what we put together is as objective as possible, not subjective. And that's going to help us greatly in trying to get this done. So, great group. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Well, this is a. You want the board? I forget one.
That's really embarrassing because we just have one teeny tiny little question. Like, so we're the South group, but so funny. Shed roofs, my favorite topic. So if you remember, a shed roof is just a roof like this at an angle. And the comment was, do you like a shed roof like this that can just dangle out by itself? Or do you think that a dormer is basically a shed roof that's attached to another roof? Dormers don't seem to bother anybody. Same thing with like a secondary roof. So if you have one of those ag industrial buildings, you know, it has a gable roof and then a secondary shed roof off of it, but it's attached. Those don't seem to bother anybody. And then the other one was like an overhang that is attached to a regular roof. Overhang, it's a shed roof that's attached. So the bottom line was, as long as your shed roof has attached to one thing on one side, doesn't seem to bother anyone. So, and I really like all the work the other groups did. I totally agree with you guys, so thank you.
Okay, let's see, were there any other, I think all the groups reported, if there are any other comments that folks would like to share that we might not have discussed as a group just now, or go for it.
Well, I sent you the camp, what was the name of it?
Not Shasta area, right?
something, I can't
Yes.
remember, but so at the last workshop, I mentioned that Marlon Guinea had kind of created a really cool plan for downtown Shingle Springs by the railroad depot. And one of the things, and I forgot to mention it last time, and the other morning I went, oh my gosh, I wanna make sure that I introduce that to the group and get feedback. But he had a concept of commercial buildings that were literally in railroad cars, like caboose, an engine, you know, the cars themselves. And I remember, gosh, in a conversation along the way the last decade, where we came upon, there's a park somewhere in, let's call it Shasta, I don't.
There's a hotel.
It's a hotel,
Yeah,
a hotel, like a campground thing, and it's all in train cars.
Right.
And, okay, so I submitted that to Tom because I thought that, we as a group over the years had talked about, that would be a really cool thing to have down by the depot and or across from the depot, because there's a lot of empty commercial property right across from the depot. And so in that area, and actually over across is kind of hilly and it's commercial and would really look cool with a project with, you know, train cars. So I submitted that. I don't know how we introduce it and get it into the design standards, but I do think that I wanted to see if everybody thought that was a cool idea, because it would be very touristy, it would tie into the downtown, you know, rail theme. And then if everybody's kind of like liking that idea as an option, probably just there though, we don't want rail cars all over the place. But right by the depot, it seems appropriate, and I did remember that Marlon had a plan for that. And so how would we get that into the plan, idea, concept if we wanted to do that?
Just want to add a comment, the one we're talking about is in Dunsmere.
Dunsmere, there it
It's
is,
in Dunsmere and they're all cabooses.
all of them, okay,
Yeah, they're not Pullmans or anything like that.
okay.
Walnut Creek has a restaurant in the railroad car off the side of it, and it's also very cool.
Yeah.
This one is called, the one they're referring to is called Jubilee Rails. If you wanna look it up. Jubilee what?
Jubilee.
Rails.
And Truckee has one as well, it's a restaurant.
Okay, so I just didn't know if the group thought that that would be a cool idea down by our rail area, which we had talked about over the years, but I just forgot about it until the other day, and I thought, well, since we're right here talking about that, if everybody thinks it's a cool idea, we should probably figure out how, you know, planning staff can incorporate that into the designs. I don't know, cause that's
It's a whole separate thing, but that would be nice. I mean, I like the idea. It would probably
Yeah.
require some sort of separate
something,
discussion. You can't be blended here.
yeah.
3 styles plus a rail car. Jokes to a quarter. Yeah.
Yeah.
The joke office area.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, I'm sorry I came in late, I hope nobody had mentioned it, but maybe somebody had, but it was in the last meetings a few years back, I had come up with the idea, or I thought it would be such a cool thing to kind of take care of 2 problems. One, how we're gonna do, how the city or how the area downtown Shingle Springs would be, as well as an old project, San Steno. That could raise its head, and I thought with the train station and everything, it's some way if this county could get the money to buy that land and make the most beautiful park out of that San Steno. It's all completely untouched land. Could you imagine having that train go up there and up and around San Steno, the whole perimeter around there, and then come back down? It would be a park, it'd be an entertainment type thing. I mean, I just threw that out there, what the heck?
So,
We have to approve the road.
Yeah.
so a long time ago, there was, in the area plan, there was this historic district boundary which included the railroad. So that's why I'm wondering if, cause I kind of envisioned having that inside of what we already, inside of this. And then everything in that area would be more railroad craftsman style, so that's all kind of matching. And I like Lori's idea about the train cars, I don't know if that could be. I don't
In
know how
that
you
area,
designate that.
Yeah,
Well, we'll look at all the ideas tonight for sure. I mean, there's also been other comments that have come in that we are, since the board didn't really scope us to create a whole new style, because that would have a different, at least at this stage, we could also look at elements of the railroad craftsman style, which were customized and designed just for Shingle Springs, and see if there's elements in the railroad craftsman, because none of us are architects, that we can pull out. That would give a certain look and feel to the neighborhood without additional time and so forth, so that we can get these standards into, folks' hands. But also put as much quality as we can into it while we're working, so it's. We wanna look at all these styles for sure. But we wanna look at what's practical, how to achieve the neighborhood specific designs too. The best way to make that happen.
Stu, what are you saying that historic outline, that might be a good template to use for where, if we wanted to include the train cars within that? And because, Supervisor Carlin, you were saying, don't want to necessarily allow them everywhere.
Right.
Is that?
So we have to kind of look at where this is, it may need to be expanded. I know that our railroad board would like to get there's a turnaround in there too, so we want to get that restored somewhere. It's we kind of know where it is, yeah. And there are some railroad buildings that we like to restore there too, so. And then it gets complicated because it's the JPA property and some other stuff, but yeah, I think in that area, it would be cool. There's a huge industrial, that maybe this would get extended and they can do something in there.
Yeah.
I could add, following up on what Sue said, at the last meeting, I had suggested that maybe in our kind of core area around the depot, we have more specificity about what we'd like to see. I agree with Gina. I think, I'm thinking about it more. All three styles have their benefits and look nice, but I do think in that core area right near the railroad depot, if somebody were to put an industrial farmhouse building there, I'm not sure it would really fit. And so maybe in this historic district, that little narrow strip of Mother Lode, if that's an area where we could say, okay, only railroad craftsmen in that area, or maybe railroad craftsmen plus gold rush. I don't know, something like that.
So that's what I was kind of playing with, like I said, I had a hard time digesting this document. So, and we had worked on some stuff throughout the years, so I kind of took what we had done and I'm trying to go, it's overwhelming. A month where I had family and everything, but creating a separate historic district with some standards just for that boundary within this, I think will balance subject, like you said, like what he says.
And if I can just make another pitch, I made this at our last workshop. Did you start to see some of the rationale behind these tables, these groups, was based on feedback that we received that we felt required more discussion by the community for implementation. So the county is moving forward, as Tom and Karen had mentioned, the county is moving forward with an additional 30-day public review period. That'll be August into September. There'll be a notification that goes out about that. Please submit comments. If there are additional comments that maybe weren't on these topics, submit it through the email. We get copies of all of those, and those comments are gonna make their way in front of the commission, in front of the board, and those are more touch points to come and weigh in on thoughts. Because a plan like this isn't complete until the day it's formally adopted. So there are still months ahead in order to get more feedback, and to dial in some of this a bit more. So I just appeal to you, a plan is only as good as the comments you receive from the community. So please submit your comments. It really helps drive the discussion, and I think we've actually dialed in a few things tonight, which is fantastic.
So can we put stuff in standards like height limitations and things like that, so that we don't end up with that 18-story complex?
What we do as far as height goes, I mean, we don't specify other than the zoning limits.
Yeah.
But if and I'm not an architect or a designer, but if there are specific height limits that would work with the
So we can
standard, and
adjust them.
yeah, you can suggest those, because we've also done that with certain multifamily standards, where the community said we want to reduce the length of single walls. So we reduced it by half to what was in the interim standards. And as long as it's something that was, we can't have 5-foot single walls and still have a hallway in there. But if it's feasible to design for something like that, then we could just incorporate that. We'd ask to see those comments so we can see where they would fit.
And if you do have suggestions about that, I think it's important, at least the group back here was concerned over the types of development coming in that were not reflective of the area, if they were 3, 4, 5 floors. And how do we start to have designs that start to dictate that form of a building? So if there are suggestions on height, please provide it. A 30-foot building, you typically won't be able to potentially get 3 floors out of it based on the roof type, it just depends. So when we start to have that discussion, I think it's important that we understand that context.
Can this document address solar panels over parking areas?
Over some,
Well, I would say as far as that goes, a lot of that runs into what as I understand, state mandates. Because it's the idea of if the state regulates the same area that the county wants to regulate, then state supersedes. And so, again, I'm not an attorney, but basically the state does supersede the county requirements in terms of solar mandates for all new housing. We can't take in a new house now without a solar plan. I mean, so that.
But what I'm getting at is if it's going to be suggested that on new construction that in a commercial area that the parking be in the back, then solar panels won't be as ugly, but they're just ugly.
It's gonna depend on the tree surrounding.
That's true.
That's a good place for solar.
Yeah, it's really multi-level.
About solar panels on top of train cars.
I'm not saying totally out.
So then we have that, yeah, I see, so we keep that in mind, because if we know solar panels can go on most properties by state law, if they meet the state requirements, right?
Is there a way that we can make?
Yeah,
it
then where would you like these structures to go to support?
They could
Right.
get a shed roof
Yeah.
treatment, Lori.
Yeah.
Great.
One way to look at that is not actually regulating the solar panel itself, which the state regulates, but to regulate the structure that it would sit on. So if you think of some more urban areas, your parking lots have like, going back to that shed style, but that shed style overhang that covers all the parking spaces, and then they put solar on top, you're actually regulating the structure, not the solar. So if there's a public comment about, can we look at other shade structures for parking, not a parking garage, but things that cover the parking, that's something that can be regulated, but the solar would be, what's on it is separate. So. And those are all the things for consideration, does that conflict with the styles?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, one could say yes, so that's the give and take, we have these conversations.
So on that idea, you could have shade structures, okay, for parking, but they need to be a western look or it shouldn't be modern slanted roof, metal. That you would be.
Right.
So we could maybe address it in this document,
Yeah.
a treatment of,
Right.
so keep someone write that down.
So like the structure for
Yeah.
solar panel.
You go on the roof, I don't see it.
On the shed.
And what is the trade-off, is people are voicing concerns about taller buildings, which I understand. But also, when wanting to balance that with keeping like open space. So obviously when you build up, you're not building out. Like, does that fall into like these, or is that just kind of zoning?
You could look at that in terms of our general standards, because as if you look through the document, and we're still revising, but if you look at it right now, we have a general set of standards depending on the type of use, and then we have the architectural style standards for most uses. But in the general requirements, you can change, we could consider, I mean, we thought about it, you can treat the height and shape the buildings differently. We could actually, right now, these setbacks, the amount of open space between side property lines and other buildings are already kind of based on our zoning.
Okay.
But and we do have some space requirements for like open space areas for multifamily projects. Not too many, but if you see specific areas where you would like to specify a minimum distance, you can definitely add it, like you don't wanna see this kind of a structure any closer than this kind of use. Yeah, we can look at those and see if they make sense.
Okay. I don't have a specific. Nothing specific's coming to mind, it's just, I know that those are trade-offs.
I will say, I'm always skirting growth, I think, kind of, live in a more rural area and having experienced it in the different areas I've lived in, the minute they start expanding the height of the building, you end up with a very urban looking environment regardless of architecture. So it depends kind of what we want the community to look like overall. If we want that urban, blocking the sun, can't grow trees, it does change your look. So I think we kind of want to take that into kind of, if we're gonna talk about building.
When,
30 feet too short.
well, I was just gonna say, is it better to talk about number of floors or feet? Because isn't it different for commercial and multifamily, the number of feet in the floor?
Yeah,
So-
that gets into building code, I don't
Yeah.
know if a floor is 12 feet, something like that. And it really gets highly regulated in the building code, but if you do have a maximum height, then that might get a little closer toward dialing it in, although I'd have to work with the folks, the consultants on that to see
I mean,
what
best
pencils out.
practice is to regulate by feet, not by stories.
Okay.
Because it is, the floor height does change depending on product.
I have a question and maybe to answer. When we have a map here with the dark red areas that are either CPO or CCM. Are those the only places that this is gonna happen, or could someday down along French Creek Road, you could create a CR, a CCO, or stuff like that?
So right now, it's just applicable to those specific zoned areas. Now, that doesn't mean down the road, if a property owner came in and wanted to rezone their property, which would go through planning commission, go through board approval, that they couldn't do that and then construct that. But as of right now, it's only in those areas.
But then the design standards would apply if they.
Correct, so if
Yeah.
someone did rezone their property later down the road and they wanted to build a new development, commercial, multifamily, mixed use, this would come through.
So there are no properties outside of that map that fit that criteria at this point?
What is identified by all the parcels on that map by zone, that is where this only applies. Yes. Yes, there's nothing beyond that right now unless somebody wants to change.
Is that in this package?
That is not in this package because this was actually brought up at the last meeting, was the discussion of, hey, we'd like to have a map. And that's gonna be in the next draft, and then it states each of the zones clearly, so it's,
And I think,
we had it up on the screen.
Yeah, it was the same map, but we put it in the revised one.
Go in there.
but it's also up on the website. So,
Yes.
yeah, so if you went
Same.
to the El Dorado County Shingle Springs Design Standards web page, there's the map is posted on the page. You can see it, yeah,
We're working on it, we're working on sharing.
okay, yeah. Not that one particular one, that's ours.
So Lori,
That was ours. It's this one.
Lori,
That's
visualize your rock and then the industrial area and those apartments in the back. Is that in the area now?
No, the business park has its own design
It's
standards.
got it, yeah.
Doesn't the business park Barnett have its own design
But
But
standards?
that's the concentration.
Barnett does have
Apartments
some
now.
minimal standards, but where it is silent, it now goes to the interim standards, which is what applies. So basically, if Shingle Springs gets these standards approved, then the Barnett Business Park would have to design to these standards to the extent it can, meaning that we look at the design Barnett Business Park standards, but we would also have to look at whatever comes out of this product and apply whatever is stricter. Because Barnett does tell county staff where to apply a design review permit. But it doesn't tell the county what to look for except to point to whatever the design manual is in effect of the day. So basically Barnett has to do design review, but you have to meet the current design standards. Right now, they're the interim standards. If Shingle Springs is approved, it would be the new Shingle Springs standards. So if you have, however, a lot of the zones down in Barnett Business Park are industrial and research and development, which would not apply to this project, so that's the missing piece. If you go south on Duroc, there are some commercial properties. They would apply to this. But a lot of the larger warehousing buildings, those are industrial and wouldn't apply.
could we apply industrial? I mean, that's kind of the industrial farmhouse.
Well, they could, I mean, again, any discretionary project, I could say, let's just say a new project came in for the Barnett Business Park. They can use the interim standards or even the Shingle Spring standards if they wish to, but they're not mandated in the industrial zone.
Where's the Barnett Business Park?
You know where Duroc and Shingle Line Road goes, kind
Yeah.
of south, kind of before, east of that.
Okay.
To kind of clarify that, my understanding with the business park is when a new building goes in there, it's already a discretionary project, right? It's gotta have design review and if somebody, I think it's staff level right now, but if somebody wants to appeal to the planning commission, they can. But that would still remain.
Well, that's another question, because those areas in the Barnett Park that are commercial, which are not very many.
Right.
Most of those are industrial, but the few commercial pieces on that map, looks like Barnett is mostly industrial, but the few pieces that are orange or brown multifamily there would apply, would be applied to these standards. And so that's another question for the community is, again, we talked at the first workshop about how these standards would be applied. In other words, the general consensus seemed to be if a project fully complied with the standards, I mean, every architectural style, then it could be eligible for a building permit potentially, and not necessarily a discretionary design review process if it goes through the exhaustive list of requirements. However, that is another question as well, is again, we were not scoped to treat different areas differently.
Right.
We're basically looking at 2 types of zones. So how do we want to address that? I guess the first question is how many parcels in the business park are actually affected? Anecdotally, it looks like 3 or 4.
And how many of them are already built out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it would apply very much.
But I think that leads into a good question that was discussed back here at the table on architectural styles. Well, what if the site's already built out, does this apply, these standards? Well, not right off the bat, so essentially, if these are adopted by the board and the shopping center is built, the shopping center then doesn't have, the property owner is not forced to go change their entire building. Usually there's a development trigger, and we would need to discuss that more with county staff, but typically if you're doing a rehab or a remodel or a percentage of a project is getting rehabbed, then there's a trigger that it must come into compliance, or let's say the word shall come into compliance with this new plan. But until that point, that business, that design will stay as is until that time comes. So this is really trying to capture the new development coming in and then the development that's gonna go for a rehab in the future. And Tom, do you know, is there a percentage, or Karen, is there a percentage trigger for development once it goes beyond that, 10-15% of the structures change?
It is, we took those from the interim standards. We can get them here.
I just wanna make that clear, because I think sometimes people think that this gets adopted and everything's gonna change to look like it. It's not that fast, and it doesn't happen like that.
I know we had discussed, and maybe you remember, I think we had discussed a general figure of like 50%. But we did put some triggers in the interim standards that we brought over to where there are minimum requirements where a building will not look like Frankenstein, where if it's got a bunch of new stuff and some old stuff, it can't be, the new stuff has to repaint and refinish the old stuff to some degree, so it looks homogeneous. So we do have that, we did bring those into the standards, and I think it's around 50%, but it really depends on like circumstances, which I'd have to pull that up. While we're looking this up, was there any other general questions or comments? Want to make sure we didn't miss anything. Again, that 30-day window will be opening again soon. Yes, go ahead.
So we're having this interchange at Ponderosa funded, and there's going to be 2 roundabouts that will lend itself to two monuments, one in each roundabout, that should be governed somehow with these design standards to be incorporated, because I think those two monuments will do a lot in promoting the area we're trying to design here.
Like a caboose or something?
What?
A caboose or it's.
No, I actually thought one should be a gold miner with something, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So typically,
Talk to the high school.
public art is a separate process. And when the roundabouts are done, then there will be a separate public process at that time. They already did a process in Camino for that roundabout. And they're doing one process right now in Tahoe for the two roundabouts up there, so these roundabouts will follow that process.
Yeah, it's just an opportunity at that point.
Yeah, but we shouldn't try to dictate
No,
that
I wasn't
from here.
suggesting that goes in,
No,
it's more of a promotion in the future.
yeah,
to
it'll be
leverage these.
separate, yeah. And honestly, loosely conversations talked about the one over here kind of aligning more with the high school. And allowing the high school to really heavily participate in designing that one. I imagine a ruin in the middle, to be honest, but whatever.
Or controversial tree.
Yeah, I know. Whatever, so that'll be later when those are done.
Tom, what's the schedule for revisions to this to be put out?
You have that slide, the next steps blue slide. So we'll put it up there on the screen again. But I'd like everybody to see the deadlines, but basically, we're gonna have a additional 30-day review. So what will happen is, the consultants and staff will take your comments from tonight's workshop. And digest those and further incorporate those into the document where they fit, as it fits into the whole scheme of the document. There will be some turnaround time, so you need it. Full, I don't know. So that's basically between now and late August, so about the next month and a half. We'll have to check with the consultants on the exact time frame because it's maybe quite a bit to incorporate all comments. So, but once the comments are integrated into the revised draft, we'll release it again. So that's why I say late August through September. And then we'll go for about 30 days. And folks can always submit additional comments within that time.
And we can participate in the planning commission hearing.
Oh, for sure.
For instance, you guys pointing that out, and of course, then later with the board of supervisors.
So I would say about right now, there's about 3 to 4 weeks to pull together all the information tonight, incorporate that feedback along with the last workshop into a revised draft. But then it'll go out for a 30-day public review, probably middle to towards the end of August into September. Then any comments that come in during that comment period will then be brought forth to the planning commission at their hearing and then eventual board consideration. So there's several more touch points.
So comments to the revised draft, there won't be a final draft issue, a public review.
So the draft that's gonna go out for the 30 days, that is gonna be the public review draft. So that's
a first revised draft, maybe we have this and then that'll be the revised draft.
correct, and
And
then
there'll be
after,
comments on that for 30 days.
and then those comments will go to the commission and the board to determine which of those comments get incorporated after the 30 days. And that's in the hearing process. So that's the first hearing is December for the planning commission, and then the board will meet in January. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, you are, but so,
But it'd be
It's
nice
gonna
to have
go-
one more.
yeah, I mean, a
One more
second
comment.
draft,
Yeah, I could read this.
would the second draft be public or would it be the third draft? Would it be published prior to the planning commission meeting? Or is the planning commission just gonna get the revised draft plus a document with a bunch of comments?
At least at this point, that before the planning commission, they'll get the public review draft, which incorporates tonight's comments and the comments from Jim. And they'll get the community comments that came out through the public review period, and it's gonna be up to the commission to make the recommendation on what to include in that draft.
I mean, staff will have some recommendations, of course, to kind of give the commission areas of focus. But yes, it will be, we'll have revisions in there and track changes. probably a lot, but we'll summarize the key changes, why we made the changes, and then help the planning commission to evaluate the areas that we're looking for recommendations and any details before it goes to the board.
So when it's at the planning commission stage, can that be a 2-meeting process to get more comments in? So if you guys, you're on the planning commission,
Yes.
you guys review it. So if you were to review it, I'm not pointing, but I'm waving. If you were to review it, could you then have public comment there, take into consideration, and then come back a second time?
You can have a hearing with public comment.
Yeah, that's the right terminology.
That's the right term.
Yeah, I was asking, but
I will say on the
I
county
wanna just
side,
publish a second draft.
I will say on the county side, I mean, the typical process, this process is not following what's typical. Because the typical process for adoption of like new ordinances, sometimes even standards, typically goes through, we may do a community workshop, maybe not. Typically, it would go through a workshop with the planning commission, where the planning commission oversees essentially like what we're doing, a public comment period, and then lists a set of recommendations and direction for staff. And then we would typically go next to a board of supervisors workshop, like we've done with other ordinances, like we've done with Oaks, like we're doing for additional feedback, direction, and then go back to the planning commission board for 2 more final hearings. And in this project, we purposefully changed the scope to start with 2 community-based hearings as the groundwork, rather than a planning commission or board workshop. As a trade-off to keep it moving forward by the board's schedule of getting this with the whole thing within 3 years. But to allow the community to move forward with 2 workshops first, and then only 1 planning commission and board adoption hearing later. So it was a bit of a trade-off, but it's a little different.
Let me answer that question another way as well, is that planning commission always has the opportunity to continue the item. Oftentimes they'll base that on how much feedback they have. If there's, 2 comments and we can write that in as part of the motion, they might not need a second meeting, but if 100 comments come in and, the planning commission can say, hey, wait, we need to take some time to look at all these comments and we're gonna give staff some direction, make these changes, do this, come back with a revised draft. So they always have that option.
I just wanted to add on that, particularly with the schedule. It's maybe not a super big rush, but time is somewhat important here because until these are actually adopted, they aren't in effect. I mean, the interim standards are still in effect, but the longer this process goes on, the more time somebody has to file an application for a project. And they don't have to comply with the standards if they file before the standards are in effect. So I do think it's important to kind of move this along as quickly as possible, frankly, while still getting the public feedback. The other thing I would say is, of course, both the commission and the board have, open forum opportunities. And so people can certainly start talking with the board and the commission about this. But they already have been, but even more so. And I think you guys have other communities too that you need to get started on as well, right? As part of this. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
gas station that is potentially gonna be over there on the corner at Duroc. Will they be affected by this? No.
Unfortunately, no. They've got an application.
Well, this will be.
So the main
Yeah.
comment time
Yeah.
for really our 2 meeting here,
Yeah.
and then we've got the 30-day public review period where comments can be submitted. And is there gonna be an extra like little heads up email or something sent out in August just to kind of, yeah.
For sure, so I will send email, staff and consultants will work together for a public outreach plan, kind of like we've been doing.
Yeah.
So basically, at the announcement of the public review period, we'll have a copy of the document there. At the conclusion of the public review period, somewhere between, depending on the gap. If it happens close enough to the date of the scheduled planning hearing, then we may just have a longer lead time in front of the planning commission hearing, but we try to give at least as much time as possible lead time without putting two agendas together for the planning commission, which we can't do, right? And if we have two, full planning commission agendas, one back to back, we can't have the agenda for the planning commission for this item released until the last agenda's is finished. That being said, we'll try to put we'll put as many notices as we can out there, so you'll have a notice pre and post public review. We'll have a notice as far in advance of the planning commission as we can. It may only be one agenda cycle, but we'll keep folks in the loop, and if more communication is better, I can always send out another post. And you all can put it on the list, that's no problem at all. So, and we'll constantly update the webpage. We'll do social media updates as needed. Let me know too, if you need more of anything.
One comment on your webpage, you do have an item you can click on, it says documents. But this document, there's nothing in there, you have to go up to the meeting, you're scheduled to click to find the documents.
I'll add that. We'll be releasing it, I'll put it in there.
So just to piggyback on what Tom was saying, before the document goes out for its 30-day public review, if you're on the distribution list, the email list, you've heard about these meetings, there'll be a notification that goes out letting you know that the document's coming out. It will give you the parameters, the dates. Let's just say it's August 15th through September 15th, actual, just an example. And then as it gets closer, there'll be another notification, just so you're aware that that 30-day comment period is ending. But I do want to point out, as we kind of talked about today, just because that 30-day window closes, it does not mean that you can't continue to submit comments, show up to the planning commission, show up to the board. It is not closed until it's adopted. And that right now is targeted January. So the door's constantly open, but we need to have a window to collect comments and then get into staff reports that staff is talking about. So the window's always open.
And the thing about tonight's process, I do appreciate the process, guys. Yeah, well, that's your group mindset kind of thing. I appreciate it. We didn't have that in the first meeting.
I feel like this is our first actually starting to talk about it. I almost wish we could do this again after some of this is modified, but my question, because I didn't address a lot of, like, I don't like the introduction. I don't know that this one still has that same one in there. And so I actually went through and redid it based on the stuff that we have in our general plan and what we talked about as a community. And the history of Shingle Springs, which was, part of that was an area plan that gave us a little background of the community. So how do I introduce this without shaking all this stuff?
Oh, no, I mean, and we're making constant revisions as consultants and staff, so definitely you can definitely send a copy of those over. Because we've already changed, I mean, what's happening is we have an ongoing, since we had so few comments the first round, we're going to add these to the existing list of comments and potential revisions. And we can definitely look at that language and see how it might fit to us, that's not a problem.
And just to touch on the preamble or the introduction, there were a lot of comments about the introduction at our last meeting in June. We've cataloged all of those and we've actually started to prepare for, about the next version that's gonna go out for the 30-day public review. We have started to implement some of those changes based on the feedback. So if you have additional comments or additional points that you should be added, send it into county staff. This is the time to do that. So it makes it into that public review draft that goes out for the 30 days.
And one last thing, so why can't we make this apply to industrial also?
That actually is more of a scope and direction question.
That's something the board, we'd have to go back to the board of supervisors.
Yes, because that would be a county decision maker topic, and that's what our board weighed in on for the last several years for just these specific zones. So that'd be a decision maker question for sure.
Just like in Camino, that's all industrial. So it'd be nice to have that included with these cute little forward.
The business part?
No, the Camino,
Oh, Camino, yeah.
industrial. It's all cute little.
I mean, we could put a phrase in the applicability section of suggestions, perhaps.
Yeah.
It's outside of, it's not in the scope to be able to look outside of commercial multifamily and mixed use. But we could add some, I think we could add some broader language in the applicability of the intent.
So when you go to them, say, can we add this, add it to the scope?
That would actually be that would be a decision maker question, and that's not what we're looking at here.
So we can at least put this in a thought. Like you said, it would be a extra question that would be asked.
Yeah, well, go ahead and submit those comments and we'll definitely take a look. Like I said, we've only seen 4 comments from the public until, I think, just tonight, so it helps to get that feedback.
And so that's why if you have comments that you've been writing down, or I see an alternative introduction, provide that, I would say within the next week or 2 max, that's just gonna be from the consultant side, so that staff and the consultant team can review that and then make edits for that public review draft that goes out for the 30 days. Otherwise, it won't make it into that draft, and I think it's important, you know, we all put the time and effort to be here, so I'd like to make sure that these comments are reflected.
Any other comments you'd like to share while you're all here? It's a Monday night. We appreciate you coming out, giving 2+ hours of your time for sure. And again, you put the information again. We'll put it back on the screen. Folks didn't capture that big long email address. Please send any comments, questions, photos. Shingle Springs Community Design Standards at edc.gov.us. Go for it.
And you said, when we send pictures, you want a little note on it? A little, what do you want?
Yes, I'll be putting out a note shortly, but basically I need the name that you want associated with the photo. You know, and that's all, that's not just to give yourself credit for photos that you've taken, but you know, we want to make sure it's all legal and, you know, that you meet the legal requirements. So if you took the photo, we should credit, we should credit.
Oh, when you say name, our name.
Do you want to know what community the photo is taken from?
Sure, yeah, any information is fine, if it's not Shingle Springs, if it's like Sonora or, you know, Vallecito or whatever, yeah.
I would say also too, if there's something in particular about the photo, a detail that, you know, this is a great example of dentil molding, you know, tell us that so we know what we're looking for. Or shed roof, you know, Lori's favorite.
My favorite.
Yeah.
Great example of shed roof.
We're gonna put the big red circle with the cross.
Or it could be the opposite.
The opposite.
But Karen,
Don't
if there is a picture, you go, that is awful.
Yeah.
Send us the picture and say, I do not like this. That also helps, it really does.
Yeah,
So-
another point of caution on the photos, we need original photos, not pulled from the internet, that's what we can't use, so they've gotta be original photos.
Correct. If that helps, and that's why we need your name on it as the creator, for sure.
You could also, if you know the address of a place that I know like a Dollar Tree was mentioned and you know where it is, you can also send a comment to the email and let us know where it is and we can maybe try to figure out how to get a photo that we can use of it. So even if you're not able to make it out and take a photo of it, you can send us an address, so we at least know where you're talking about and what you're talking about.
Okay.
So I do have another question, so like in our county standards, there's a whole section on lighting, there's a whole section on parking and signage. How do we mish that with what's already there to this? I mean, do you say apply to what's in municipal code, blah, 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 plus this, or you don't wanna have to, or you wanna just have, so there's a lot of options in the municipal code. Can we make this more specific than what that was? I mean, you know what I mean, we have 2 big codes that.
Well, I mean, Brent can elaborate as well, put them together, but basically, this document it follows the example of the interim standards, which refer out to existing county codes and standards, just to not have to double up and count it here too. For example, the parking, lighting, landscaping standards, it refers out to those requirements, just instead of creating new ones, it says meet that.
As a designer, that's really hard to go back and read through 18 different codes, so that's kind of why I'm asking. It'd be nice to have everything that this is required to do instead of referring to other codes. So I didn't know if
No, I would say submit that as a comment, we'll see what we can do with it, I mean, it is a balancing act because we can't put every code known to modern man in this document to then keep it short
I mean,
and easy to read.
almost like some of those
Yeah,
codes,
right.
maybe you don't want them to apply to this.
Yeah, no, very good question, I mean, it's
Put a live link at
Yeah.
first.
if the link doesn't change, it's the state.
Right,
Yeah.
yep,
And people are like, I can't
Well,
find
we
this.
start owning
I
stuff.
think the county did that, dude.
Well, like old general plan references, yeah, so it's, we'll look at it. All right, well, I wanna thank you all for coming out and taking your time, again, submit comments, and we've appreciated the feedback a lot. So thanks so much.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say.